Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman. I will be your host for the next hour here on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Today is Monday, May 20th. We are marching right through spring, but you would never know that in the hinterlands of Utah, where we had some more snow last week. We've got rain scheduled all for the rest of this week. I keep telling myself, we need the water, we need the water, we need the water. I actually postponed a trip that I was going to have into northeastern Wyoming this coming week, and it's even worse up there. So I'll be home, and we'll be here at the Cerberus Radio Network, available to give you outstanding radio. Our other hosts are in the background here. Junk Bond, Greg Carpenter, is joining us. He'll be kind of quiet. He has a bout of pneumonia, but he's still here for the moral support. Thank you very much, Junk Bond. Jeff Johnson, producer extraordinaire and co-host, is also here for us today. He's going to share a little bit of insight into a trip to Philadelphia. He recently had a little bit of constitutional issues that they came across. Want to remind you, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. CRN, bless you. CRN is our fan page. Is our fan page. And you can follow my Facebook public page, Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report. I am not taking friend requests for a while. I'm still in the Facebook correctional facility. So follow me over on my news page. I took over 1,000 people off my regular page, and follow me there. Jeff's an admin on there, and he can keep that going as well. We do have a YouTube channel, and if you are listening live via YouTube, please participate in our live chat. Jeff will be monitoring. He will be forwarding your questions, comments, concerns, etc. SoundCloud. If you cannot listen or watch live, go to our SoundCloud page. Everything there is available for free download. So please follow, subscribe on Facebook, SoundCloud, whatever, all of them. Free downloads, all of our shows. Junk Bond's show, The Spy Who Loves Liberty, Liberty Minutes, my show Case in Point. Fundamentals of Federalism, Waking Up Cerberus, all the stuff that you did not see live, including mine, The Wasatch Report, you can hear on SoundCloud at your convenience. Let's see. Did I leave anything out? I don't think I did. We've got a few things to cover today. A little bit of stuff from California with some preparedness. If you might remember, we had some major wildfires, lots of lives, lots of property lost there, and that was attributable to PG&E. And they are going to be dealing with that and trying to prevent a repeat performance. California's going to experience a lot of power outages. We'll get into that. Justin Amash is calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump. I have a little bit of commentary with regards to that. And let's see, we have some gun control issues. Joe Biden doesn't understand the Second Amendment. What a surprise there. Also, RIP Switzerland. I'll be getting into that as well. Jeff, how was your trip to Philadelphia? You had an interesting comment. Why don't you share that with me, and then we'll expound upon that and then jump into impeachable offenses and Justin Amash.
Just before I get to that, Greg
Sure.
had a message. He had one thing to announce. So go ahead, Greg, and then I can jump right into that.
I do. While I have a voice, I'd just like to throw this in here. I wanted to just quickly say happy birthday to my baby daughter, Caitlin, who is 21 today. She has survived living with mom and dad for 21 years and is now legally able to come back and smack me in the face. So I just want...
And I hope she does, because you interrupted my show. No, happy birthday, Caitlin.
Again, yes.
Again, yes.
No.
Well,
okay, now I'll be quiet again.
It's also our good friend Kevin Goodsman's birthday today, too. So
really? Correct. That's right.
Facebook, yes. Send some love over that way. So let's
constitutional love only.
Yes. Constipation, constitutional love. You got it. Junk. No, not Junk Bond. Jeff, What about you had a comment that was interesting about Philadelphia. When I first got started in this whole radio thing because of the things that I had heard on a month-long, not 3-hour, month-long tour with my boys, taking them to places of historic significance. And I actually wrote everything down. And that's really what got the ball rolling for me. And you had some interesting comments that you overheard I think it was the Hall of Congress, was it there?
Yeah, it was the Congress Hall at Philadelphia, at Independence Hall. So after the Declaration, the Congress met in Philadelphia. There was Congress Hall. Then I shared a picture as well of upstairs, the upper chamber. That kind of has some context there because it was upstairs above the Congress Hall in the Senate chamber. Well, while we were in the Congress Hall, the park employee, I'm not sure if he's a park ranger or not, but whatever he was a park employee, was giving some history to the Congress, and he started talking about the first bank and how they knew it wasn't constitutional, but they passed it and it came into being anyway. So I thought it was just very interesting that they right away know that they don't have the power to do things, yet they were doing it right away before the ink was dry. And just one other thing, it was just kind of funny. After we left the Senate chamber upstairs, this one couple, I was looking at one of the pictures. I can't remember if it was Louis whatever or Marie Antoinette. I don't know. There's two big paintings up there, one of Louis and one of Marie Antoinette, right around the time of the Revolution. And I believe both were sent to the guillotine, and both were dead shortly thereafter, after they had these big paintings done. So anyway, these people asked a question, and after the park ranger gave his answer, I kind of just said, well, here's what, I gave. And they were all stood there with their mouth open. And the guy goes, are you a history professor? And I said, no, I'm just a student of history. So you can learn things by just reading, and you can make an impact on people. I really surprised him, and actually the park guy was really receptive. He was like, wow, okay, that's cool. I didn't know that. So anyway, but it was interesting, the idea that they knew it wasn't constitutional, but they still did it anyway.
Well,
That's a rarity because because usually the park rangers will give you standoff distance and then make you go away and hang your head in shame because you know the truth and they're just regurgitating what they've been taught at ranger school. That's the first time I've actually ever heard of a park ranger being very receptive to the truth. Very interesting.
That is exactly what I was thinking, because the exact opposite happened to me at Harper's Ferry. And the funny thing is, as the ranger in his little government issued National Park Service costume and badge and hat was talking about the geography of the area and Thomas Jefferson overlooking the confluence of the rivers there and so on and so forth, the Jefferson's Rock. Then he said the really interesting thing here, and he now starts getting into the raid and John Brown, is it turned the entire Civil War, meaning John Brown's raid, into one about slavery. And my older son, put his head in his hands and said, oh, here we go. It's like, oh, no.
Suzanne, I want to go with that because
I've heard that before,
I was at Independence Hall. They built when I was there years and years ago, the Liberty Bell was over by Independence Hall. Now they have all these new multi-million-dollar buildings, and they have this big building where the Liberty Bell is. Well, right before you get to the Liberty Bell, there's this room with this video playing, and it was fine. I was listening to it. They're talking about the Liberty Bell, and then what's the next thing that comes out of their mouth?
Slavery.
Oh, yep. They passed it. Well, not everyone could enjoy the liberty. It was like, and so then they go to slavery, and I was like, I walked away. At that point, I was done listening. I walked away because you can't. They keep this divide going. Slavery has been long over, except for the tax slavery that we live under. But
Well, I mean, the slave trade continues to this very day, and it has been something that I saw an interesting article about that. Even Jesus didn't condemn slavery. This was Aristotle didn't condemn slavery. This is something that's been going on since the beginning of time. But if you listen to the modern historians, the only people that ever owned slaves were the founding fathers, who were proponents of limited government. So really going back to Harper's Ferry, this guy and I just went at it, and the lies he told. I'm not going to retell that story right now, but you can find it. It was actually my first published article in the American Conservatives. Will the founders be remembered as slaveholders? And then I included that article actually focused on the colonial and revolutionary era. And I had written everything down, including the era of the 1860s war against Southern independence. And that you can find on my website, SuzanneCSherman.com. It's under the blogs section, Lies My National Park Told Me. So you can see that in great detail there. But the bottom line is, these guys, you go there to learn something, and you are consistently fed a big pile of steaming crap. And that occurred at Monticello, at Montpelier, Colonial, Williamsburg, Harper's Ferry, the Clemson, Calhoun's house, John Calhoun's house. I mean, I could go on and on. This was everywhere. So do check that out. But the interesting thing, when they talked about the bank, and we just mentioned our good friend Kevin Gutzman's birthday, in his book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution, he does mention James Madison, his flip-flop on the bank issue, because he originally said this is not constitutional. But then after the first national bank came about, and then the second, he said, well, they've been doing this already, it's accepted, we'll just go with it. To his credit, he did veto his own proposal, which was to use the profits from the bank to fund infrastructure. He proposed this to Congress, but he said this would require a constitutional amendment. They put the bill on his desk, sans amendment, and he vetoed his own bill because it was not constitutional. There's a big now flap about impeaching Donald Trump. And Congressman Justin Amash has just joined the fray, and he's getting excoriated by Republicans. They're going to be primarying him into the next election. And Donald Trump responds maturely, as always, calling him a loser. And what he should have just said was, this is obviously something that's politically motivated. This does sadden me. Be that as it may, let's just see how this plays out. But again, we have to have the childish response. That being said, what I will say is, where were these people calling for impeachment for again, presidents can be violated for high crimes, misdemeanors, and violating the Constitution. Where have these people been during the past 8 years, or the administrations before that? In fact, I mentioned Kevin Gutzman. We had a conversation about this just last night. And he even posted something about this on Facebook that said the last president in recent history that was not subject to impeachment for violating the Constitution, this is going to make conservatives and Republicans' heads explode, was Jimmy Carter. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. So, interestingly, Amash is going after him for the obstruction claim, but there's no mention of the violations of the Constitution. This show needs to be all going on all day long to cover them all. The one that comes to mind that really resonates with people the most is the Second Amendment, the bump stock ban. But the apologists say, well, we don't really need those anyway. Well, it's still a violation. Where were you guys then? Why aren't the Democrats, screaming about violations to the Second Amendment? Because they don't care about it. So they pick and choose. Trump won. They can't get over it. Amash is motivated politically because he's not choosing a real clincher, which would be violating the oath of office, which is to uphold and defend the Constitution. He's going after this politically motivated obstruction. Now, I'm seeing some people say, well, there's no crime, there can be no obstruction. Whether or not a crime of obstruction exists does not hang on the existence of the crime. It's a crime in and of itself. Again, I don't have a dog in this game. This is just nothing but a symptom of a severely ill, dysfunctional system. I don't take the political sides. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there is something interesting about this as far as Amash. And you know what? Amash is in Washington, D.C. So he is a politician, and there is reasons behind it. I've seen where he is now saying he's going to run as a libertarian, try to get the nomination for the Libertarian Party presidential candidate. So there may be some political reasons behind him going after Trump at this point.
Right,
So
which is exactly
this is not just him being, oh, I'm just above the law. I'm just so above everyone else and above the fray. No, he has some ulterior motive on this.
and that's why I said, Donald Trump didn't need to call him a loser. He could have just said clearly this is politically motivated. So take his comments with a dump truckload of salt. That being said, again, where were these people when Mr. Pen and a phone was legislating from the executive office? We see this right now. This is just so clear and politically motivated and disingenuous. But again, it's symptomatic of a system that is completely dysfunctional. Also, I wanted to bring up that the speaking of unconstitutional, there's a tool in the White House. I'm sorry, the White House has a tool. See what I did there? That is launching it for people that feel that they can use if they feel they've been wrongly censored, banned, or suspended on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. Again, where is the constitutional authority for the general government to monitor censorship or the lack thereof of any business, public or private? They say Facebook is a private company. Junk Bond, you're available to expound on that. Do you think Facebook is in fact a private company or part of the government?
I think it's a governmental extension. It's pretty clear when the DARPA program, the Defense Advanced Research Program Office, program activity, excuse me, shut down its program to collect all data on U.S. citizens in January 2004 under a program called LifeLog. Facebook somehow sprung up the very next month. Now, the long history of government and secret government programs, and I use the term secret loosely, but I will say DARPA, the CIA, and other branches of the government working with the Lincoln Labs up in where? Cambridge, Massachusetts, right outside of Harvard, MIT. This is not surprising that this program blossomed at the time that it did. No one else had come up with a program that was this intense or consumed this much information from people. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm not saying that I know for sure, definitely for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if those huge databases that the National Security Agency put up out in Utah are not there to house all of the Facebook data. If you can think of the amount of data that is generated each day in Facebook and how it characterizes and identifies who we are as individuals and builds into, excuse me, builds into the complete story of our life. It's everything that the LifeLog program had said it was going to do, but then was mysteriously shut down because you can't have a government program doing all that.
And
So
and
I just think it's part of a government program.
and now we fill in our own dossiers. Isn't that interesting?
Sure,
So,
it's yeah, you're just adding to your own list of how the government can snag you on different things, and you're making it public because you're doing it voluntarily. And that was a big catch that they've had for so many years is they can't get people to voluntarily give up information, right? They plead the fifth and they do all kinds of uh, judicial jockeying in order to avoid telling the truth on stuff. But people will go out there and they'll post it in Facebook. How many times have you heard someone say, and they got the information from Facebook? They had posted it and they made it publicly available on their page. Well, this is this is what's happening. People are now willfully sharing without any thought all the information that they had previously said that they would never share with the government. They're just offering it up now. And because I said all that stuff, I have to say, that none of these ideas are anything that are a byproduct of my time or work at the National Security Agency. These are all my thoughts and ideas personally. There. Now I won't go to jail again.
Well, interestingly, when you mentioned these Facebook comments, everything doesn't go away. They keep blocking me or giving me these bans for comments that are 8 years old. And this last one is spurious because I don't think I even did this one because it was a word I don't use, but if I were to use it, I would know how to spell it. It was almost like the gibberish you get from the fake accounts if you accept a friend request and then they pop up in the message, or the hacked emails, that sort of thing. Be that as it may, I completely own the comments that had gotten me banned before, and some of them were just policy statements that were about immigration and the takeover of our system because of our own asinine policies. That was just simply a matter that's considered going against their community standards. You can't even call that hate speech, but their community standards, as we know, is direct, hard left. And this is why also Zuckerberg was going and meeting with Obama so many times early in that administration, more than Petraeus was, as they were conducting war over in the Middle East. So we know that Facebook is a tool of the government. I will never buy into the fact that it is a completely a private entity. And I know it's going to be going away. And I know, again, if they're digging up comments that nobody else would ever come across because they are so old, nobody would see them. Somebody's going through there, or a computer search trying to silence me. Coincidentally, those were back from the years when I was a slobbering, stark, crazy neocon. I made John Bolton look like a dove. And I was of the whole, turn it into a glass sheet, kill them all, let God sort it out. And I completely bought into the garbage that was being spoon-fed to me by the mainstream media. Now that I have a voice of trying to get people away from this divisiveness vis-a-vis decentralization, stripping away the power, now they're shutting me up. I'm getting away. They want these hateful messages up there. You can scroll through your newsfeed and see it today. But when you start hitting a nerve and saying, you know what, here's what the real problem is, they will shut you down. And we see this time and time again. Am I going to go and use this tool and go crying like a little biatch to Donald Trump that I've been censored? No, because I'm consistent in my principles. I will not do this. I will find other ways to get the word out for as long as I can. Again, this is about expression one way or the other. I don't think the general government has any business in it. But I tell you what, let's consider for a moment that we had a wildly successful social media platform that was hardcore. I can't say conservative because conservative is also progressive, but let's say very Christian, and proposed and put forth issues of self-reliance, of personal responsibility, being accountable for your decisions, good and bad. The very ideals that Facebook and the government absolutely despise because they promote a free society. If the progressive views were being quashed, there would be an uproar and there would be something done. What we're seeing now also, because these companies are becoming so successful, Elizabeth Warren is talking about taking them apart, dismantling these big tech giants. I also want to know, we had the fairness doctrine in these cases. I think it was the Lion case where the FCC made people have the equal time on, again, the fairness doctrine on the television channels because of the scarcity of the airwaves. Well, aren't television stations also private companies? Why the difference? What gives the government the right to regulate them either? And now why do we see all of these mainstream medias are always going towards defending big government, particularly when we have the Democrats in charge? Well, who issues them their licenses? This is an inherent conflict as well. Also inherently isn't this a direct contravention of the First Amendment? When we have the government issuing operation licenses, for the media? Seems to me nobody seems to care anymore.
Well,
I
that
care. I care.
I'm so glad. You get a cookie.
I get a demerit. I don't care.
You point out. Oh, way to go, Jeff. You point out an extremely good, complex issue that, and it's the same thing with the schools, I guess. We give quote free license, and you have to go through the government that restricts your ability to do, well, whatever it is you're trying to do in order to get that quote free license. So do you really have free license to air on the television what you want to air, or show in a movie theater what you want to show, right? You have to have all kinds of permits to have a movie theater, and you have to have excuse me, different boxes have to be checked along the way, I guess you could call it. It's, and I think, Jeff, you did something or mentioned something about an automobile the other day. You know, you have to pay $100 and something in order to get the little stickers that go on the license plate that shows you're allowed to keep and operate your car still, even though you own the car. You don't necessarily own the car. You're told when and where you can operate and what you can do with your vehicle. I didn't see that the last time I was, I was in, pick a country. It didn't matter.
You know,
They have no restrictions like that.
and if you don't have that sticker, I don't know if you guys saw this video that came out of California. And I was so disappointed in the commentary from it. But there was a woman that was pulled over because her sticker on her horseless carriage was not up to date. So she was pulled over, and apparently her mother got involved, somehow interfered with the police officer. But this is how any regulation where you are not physically harming somebody, destroying property, can get you at risk for serious bodily injury if you come into contact with the police. So everybody's saying, well, this woman, clearly she shouldn't have interfered with the police. Okay, I'll give you that. The driver was pulled over. The car registration was not valid. Pulls her over. There's a confrontation. This guy, you can find the video, was a beast. Very fit, very muscular, had his vest on, had his gun, had taser, everything at his disposal to use. Many cops on the scene. What does he choose to do? Grab this woman and slam her onto the ground. I don't care how big of a thin blue line bootlicking thug you are. There is no justification for this. I will come out and support police officers when they do good, but this stuff is egregious. And that's what can happen if your sticker is not up to date and you have the audacity to question their actions. But it just goes to show that the slightest violation, if you do not comply or do not comply fast enough, you risk serious bodily injury or death.
Well, we were talking about Illinois the other day and them wanting to raise the cost of their sticker for electric cars because they can't part you from your money getting you the gas tax. So what is this? This is nothing more than a backdoor tax. This is just government out of control, whether it's state or federal.
Well, and that's what I say too. You know, you can see this, you can complain about Washington, D.C. all day long, but tyranny, beg your pardon, is really hardwired into our brains right now. We've come to look to government to solve our problems. Some comedian even tweeted to Elizabeth Warren if she could solve her problems with her love life, and Warren tweets back, private message me. We'll talk about it. Are you telling me you are so dysfunctional you have to look to a woman who lied about her race to get a job from an education? You know, they look to government to solve all their problems. But we see this, what I've noticed is government positions, whatever level, seem to attract people who have a desire to control others and use their power to do so, and the guns available to them through their henchmen to make sure you comply. Now, for those of you that were cheering on Donald Trump saying, I will declare a national emergency and get that wall built, even though, again, according to the Constitution as ratified, oh, we have a guest here, even though according to the Constitution as ratified, there is no authority for the general government to build a wall. We talk about that all the time. This is a creature of the post-1861 Lincolnian America that was rejected at the Philadelphia Convention. Presidential hopeful Kamala Harris says she's going to ban imports of all AR-15 assault weapons if Congress doesn't act. That, ladies and gentlemen, if she were to be elected into office, is what we call an impeachable offense. Do you think for a nanosecond that she would be impeached over that? Absolutely not. She announced that if she's elected president, she'll ban the importation of the AR-15 weapon by executive action if Congress fails to act in the first 100 days of her administration. Executive action. She's going to ban guns by executive action. I think we already did that with bump stocks. Something, by the way, President Obama wouldn't even do. Assault weapons are designed to kill a lot of people in a very short period of time. I think this has got to be something that is understood. We cannot any longer afford to allow people to make this a partisan issue. Well, it really isn't, because even Donald Trump said that he would, to Dianne Feinstein, that he would entertain a ban on assault weapons. There's an article that just came out today, by the way, by our good friends at the 10th Amendment Center, TJ Martineau, why the founders wanted you to own military-style weapons. I would encourage you to also read my article that I wrote with Carl Jones about the AR-15, and that you can find. It's easier if you just go to my website, SuzanneCSherman.com, and you'll see it there under Suzanne's articles. But they really focus on the militia and why the Militia Act, the first one passed May 2nd, and the second one, May 8th, I believe it was in 1792, that gave the president the power to call up the militia when the United States shall be invaded or in imminent danger of invasion from any foreign nation or Indian tribe. The second called for every free, able-bodied white male citizen between the ages of 18 and 45 to join the militia. Now, speaking of the militia, something from Jeff's home state of Pennsylvania, before the ink was dry in the holy parchment, again, we saw this very act being violated by George Washington. Whiskey Rebellion. He went in there to quell a rebellion, but what was required first? Request or permission by the government of the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. Didn't happen, but I digress a little bit. So really, this was, the founders had a fear of standing armies. They did not want a standing army in times of peace. James Madison said it was a bane of liberty. Actually, I think our friend Dave Benner just had a great quote about it, because it essentially, paraphrasing, is going to give rise to debt, to oppression, taxes, debt, oppression of the many by the few. And that's exactly what we have today. Look at what's going on right now. I was actually doing some research, and there was an article on Lou Rockwell. I'll do that on another show because I don't know if we'll have enough time. But it's about Trump designating Iran a terrorist state. We've got Venezuela in our sights. We've got Iran in our sights, and we're looking to expound upon more wars. I'm not going to get into this until Greg is feeling better, because he's kind of our guy on that. And plus, I started on this little topic of firearms, and I want to stay on it. I do follow these little breadcrumbs as they come across my screen. So also, speaking of the Democrat clown car in the circus, Joe Biden, I think he's going to be the nominee, by the way. His take on the Second Amendment: it doesn't mean you're entitled to own a gun.
I think I'm happy just knowing that Joe Biden knows there is a Second Amendment.
That's about all we can expect these days. When
Sanders told him there was.
mhm. When the patron saint of firearms rights, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, doesn't even know what the Second Amendment is or what it's supposed to do, I don't fault good old dumb Uncle Joe. Democrats really hate the idea of Americans being able to protect themselves with guns. I beg your pardon, so do Republicans. For some reason, to this day, every single responsible gun owner gets lumped up with all the bad guys who commits violence. This is an article out of Flag and Cross. Who cares that the bad guys break the law to get their guns? Who cares that they are mentally ill? Joe Biden admitted that the Second Amendment exists, but stressed during his speech in New Hampshire on Tuesday, it does not say everyone is entitled to own a gun. He was taking questions at a small outdoor venue, then added, by the way, if one of you left the keys in your car down the street and a kid comes along and jumps in and takes off, you could be held liable civilly for that. So if you own a gun, put a damn trigger lock on it. Put it in a case. You have an obligation. Okay, first of all, Uncle Joe, none of this is any of your business. The Second Amendment unequivocally does not grant you any rights whatsoever. This is the problem when we refer to the Second Amendment as and the guns as Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment is only a restriction on the general government. And this is what happens. Like when we talked about the Militia Act, that's why I brought up the 10th Amendment article. Please go to the 10th Amendment Center, read that article, support them. When they talked about the militia and the second and the need to avoid a standing army, they did not want the general government to have the authority to regulate firearms at all. That's all the Second Amendment was to do. This is the problem with the Heller opinion. Antonin Scalia said, well, it took him, the textualist, the originalist, who says the Constitution says, means what it says what it means. He said it was very simple. Just look to the plain text of the words. Well, the Second Amendment is very short. Well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As I wrote in my article published by the 10th Amendment Center, How Heller Botched the 10th Amendment, he took 63 pages to explain the meaning of the Second Amendment, and he still gets it wrong. He says, I don't have it in front of me, but just paraphrase essentially, that the Second Amendment entitles you to have a handgun because they're so popular and easy to use in your own home for personal defense. Because of that limited definition of the Second Amendment, we're seeing all this crap about banning the ARs because now they lost their boogeyman, handguns. That used to be the boogeyman of gun control. So now it's the ARs. And that's because, well, Heller didn't say they were protected, so we're going to go after that. They are a very popular firearm. They are very easy to use. They are very good for home defense. They meet all the criteria of Heller, but no politician is going to stand up and say so. And by the way, other than saying the District of Columbia's law in Heller is unconstitutional, case closed, let's move on. He left the door open for all this garbage that we are seeing today. They could have slammed the door on every single one of these federal firearms regulations with these handguns, ARs, you name it, but they don't and they never will. And the NRA doesn't do a damn thing about it. Comments, anybody?
Well, the NRA isn't going to comment because they need that next fundraiser. As long as there's the appearance that they are fighting it, they can keep sending out those letters. We need money. Help the ILA. We're fighting for you. No, they're fighting for that next fundraiser.
Well, and that's why I'm so outspoken against national reciprocity. Again, that's another one by the 10th Amendment Center. Go to my website. You'll see them all there. And national reciprocity is a Trojan horse. That's a headline, or that is the title of the article. And by granting them the power over the concealed carry permits that are issued by the states and forcing them to honor them, if you're looking at the big picture with the laser beam or a laser pointer, that's fantastic. It looks like a great idea, but we like to dig a little bit deeper here. All these organizations and news outlets saying these ideas are good. The analysis is as deep as a bird bath. Think about what the politicians are saying. We've got a clown out in California saying he'll nuke those that don't turn over their guns or want to have a civil war over refusing to turn over their guns. We've got Kamala Harris saying that she's going to, on her own, ban the importation of ARs. We are seeing that they have to be registered. We're seeing in states they need to be confiscated. Again, state issues, but this is a pulse of the gun control climate here. Joe Biden says you're not entitled to have a gun. That's not about it. Then people say, well, what about nukes? Again, you get away from these arguments by saying it's not about any type of firearm or weapon. It's about the general government and their lack of authority to regulate them. It simply reiterates that under Article 1, Section 8, they were never delegated this authority. So again, every 4 years we have it, the dog and pony show, the circus is coming to town. Think about how many of them, even on the Republican side, are going to be justifying, with the blessing of the NRA, things like the extreme risk protection orders. This is going to be something that I believe both parties are going to embrace. Case in point, candidate Trump, I believe in the Second Amendment. We need to respect the laws we already have. Well, look how many new ones we got since he was elected.
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Thank God the government passed a law that said that you cannot have a nuke.
Amen.
I mean, good grief. Can you even imagine how many people would be building nukes today if they didn't pass a law?
I would.
Passed by the very government who is the only entity to ever use them, by the way. Oh, Suzanne, that's too far. Japan deserved it. Shame on you.
Don't even go there.
That's a topic.
Don't even freaking go there. Oh my God. What a brutal way to destroy people. And for no reason whatsoever. Oh boy. You hit a sore spot, lady.
They proved it worked.
Yeah.
Who proved what worked? Wait a minute. What are you talking about?
They proved that the bomb worked. I mean, they just had practiced on somebody, and the Japanese were there.
We had already practiced on our people.
Well, come on, Greg.
Okay, now I went and done it. The 2 listeners are already gone. I want to give a shout out, though, to my good friend Andy, who's traveling home today, and he's going to be listening to the show on his commute. Oh, and I want to touch back on something really quick before I get into RIP Switzerland with regards to Facebook censorship. By the way, a friend of mine sent me a message saying that he got a 3-day ban. What amateur. I'm up to like 45 now. And he actually posted a cartoon that showed Hitler and one of his henchmen with a Jew on the ground. And it says, it's so much better when you think of them as clumps of cells. So never mind that Trump and anybody that's a Republican or wearing a MAGA hat is literally Hitler to these people. And that's perfectly acceptable in these social media tech giants or, forums. That's okay. But if somebody says, look, we dehumanized the Jews, Hitler, National Socialists, dehumanized the Jews. It was acceptable because of the dehumanization. And we are doing the same thing here. They are calling out the truth, and that will get you banned. The truth will set you free, but it will get you banned on Facebook. So I think that meme, by the way, was very disrespectful. I think it was disrespectful to Hitler because Hitler only killed 6 million. We're up to over 60 million and counting, and shamelessly doing so. Moving on. RIP Switzerland. Switzerland voters back European Union regulations. Did they learn nothing? Did they not see the Brexit movie? Did you guys see the Brexit movie?
I did not.
Oh, you got to watch that. Voters in Switzerland. Now, Switzerland has always been the bastion of freedom and liberty. You know, they have the banking system that everybody loved. Well, the U.S. government put a stop to that. They stayed out of all the wars. They minded their own business. When I talk about Switzerland, and all of us talk about that here on this network as well, and their decentralized system of government. I had somebody tell me one time, well, nobody cares about Switzerland. That's my point. But apparently now the European Union cares about Switzerland, particularly the guns owned by the Swiss people. And apparently the people in Switzerland, by over 60%, are stupid enough to agree with them. Voters in Switzerland have backed a tightening of gun laws to conform with the European regulations. You idiots. Almost 64% of voters in Sunday's referendum supported tougher restrictions on, once again, semi-automatic and automatic weapons. Final results show, ooh, they get the automatic ones. Lucky them. Switzerland is not a European Union member, but risked removal from the open border Schengen area if it voted no. Nearly 48% of Swiss households own a gun, among the highest rates of private ownership in Europe. The EU urged the country to tighten its laws with rules adopted by the bloc following the 2015 Paris terror attacks. So this is how stupid the people in Switzerland are. A terror attack occurs in another country and they take guns away from their own citizens, and they're fine with that. The rules restrict semi-automatic and automatic rifles and make it easier to track weapons in a national database. The Europeans' initial proposal sparked criticism in Switzerland because it meant a ban on the tradition of ex-soldiers keeping their assault rifles. Swiss officials negotiated concessions, but some gun activists argued the rules still encroached on citizens' rights. What does the projected result tell us? Opponents of the gun laws described them as diktat from Brussels, exactly, forced upon a non-European member of Switzerland against its will. The Swiss national identity, with its long tradition of gun ownership, was, they argued, being undermined. But Sunday's nationwide referendum shows voters think differently. They have overwhelmingly backed the new gun laws following their government's advice. The Swiss seem keen to cooperate in the European Union's attempt to prevent terror attacks and to keep their often tricky relations with Brussels as smooth as possible. Why is the EU concerned about Swiss gun laws? After the 2015 Paris attacks, remember, never let a good crisis go to waste. They issued Schengen members with new restrictions on automatic and semi-automatic weapons. Jeez, it's hard to talk on Mondays. The rules called for ban on rapidly firing multiple rounds, automatic, semi-automatic weapons. Each owner of such a weapon to be known to police across Europe, all essential weapon components to be clearly labeled and registered electronically. You know what we're going to see now? You know what, Switzerland? You know what's coming your way? The very terrorist attacks that justified this gun control in the first place. Mark my words. How long do you think this is going to be, guys, before they start getting the same nonsense that's happening in the rest of Europe because of their asinine gun bans? Anybody want to take a poll? I say 5 years, if not later or sooner.
It's going to happen. I mean, it's just they're out of their minds. Number one, they aren't even a member, and to knuckle under them is crazy. But they have the same problem everyone else over there is. They've been indoctrinated, and that's what's happening here. That's why the public school systems are winning the war, because they're indoctrinating the kids today, and they're going to these things to sit in to end gun violence or for the climate change. The indoctrination here is going full tilt as well.
The Swiss government urged voters to back the changes. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, when your government tells you you don't need a gun and to get rid of your guns, not only do you need to keep the ones you have, you need to get a dozen more. It said gun enthusiasts would not notice the new rules, while adopting them would allow Switzerland to retain its Schengen membership. So essentially, they are trading the security of their sovereign citizenry for economic gain and tourism. Shame on them. Jeff, if you were told that you had to either get rid of or register a semi-automatic weapon, would you notice that change in regulation? I would.
I would.
How?
And I would have a boating accident with my firearms. They'd be gone.
So many boating accidents going on. So I just wanted to share that story with you. A little bit of stuff out of California. We're going to get into a bit of prepping today because we did say that in our show description, I believe. And so want to turn to something in California. And I remember this because California has an issue with PG&E, with power outs. We've had some issues also with PG&E. A while back, there was a massive gas explosion. I believe it was in San Bruno. But recently, we had some major wildfires, loss of life. This has been a few years running. But this time, there were power lines that were causing these fires. So PG&E now is going to be cutting back, I guess, on the services for when we have high wind weather patterns out there. And the 6 of the 10 most destructive wildfires in California history have come in the last 18 months, killing 123 people, shutting down large sections of the state's electrical grid. And the season, anyway, PG&E is warned places like Calistoga that it could cut service as many as 15 times this fire season. Again, these wires that had the hot power going through them when we had the high winds cause these horrific wildfires. So now they're talking about what's going to happen with places like senior residential centers or where people are susceptible to the high temperatures or life-saving equipment is needing to operate. Well, the problem is you need to have backup generators. And this really gets to the whole issue of preparedness. California the grid cannot sustain the population it has. When I lived there and we would have a heat storm, we would have rolling brownouts, rolling blackouts. And the bottom line is you absolutely have to be prepared for these things. We have seen this time and time again, especially, like I said, in California. We also had a power station that was subject to an attack from getting shot. The transformers were shot. This was over by, I think it was called Coyote Valley. It's right off of 101. They did nothing to secure the area. Anybody can shoot these transformers from there. And that same night, that was a coordinated attack on the fiber optic cable in Gilroy. Within 15 minutes, these two attacks happened within each other, and that severed the 911 capabilities. So once again, think about, especially it's difficult in California with the gun restrictions being as draconian as they are. We've already had instances of experimentation with cutting off the ability for others to come and help you. Moral of the story, be your own 911 until help can finally get there. Solve your own problems. You're responsible for your own security. You are responsible for protecting your family. Think about what you're going to do if you cannot rely on the source of power. Just having solar power, particularly the ones that are hooked up to the grid, are not going to be good enough. Be able to store some power, have a backup generator. I've got them here. You can still have those there. Be prepared, because California, you've got some power outages coming your way. Interestingly enough, the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission in California, also approved some rate hikes to defray the cost of PG&E's own negligence and make their customers pay for that. So that being said, be ready for stuff like that. Also, last week I shared with you a little incident that happened on Mother's Day. My son and I we were just going for a quick little ride out in the little bit of wilderness by my house. And when his car broke down, we realized that, oh, gee whiz, we're really not set to be here all night. I just had a pair of mules on. We didn't have jackets, didn't have my firearm. We were in mountain lion country, but we were just going for a quick little drive. Quick story out of Omaha, Nebraska, about having the means to solve your own problems. What could this gentleman have done to avoid having to do this on his own leg? A northeastern Nebraska farmer had to cut off his own leg with a pocket knife to save himself from a piece of farming equipment he had become caught in. He was just going to go out and use his tractor and do some farming. They report that a 63-year-old man was unloading corn when he got out of his truck and accidentally stepped on the grain hopper opening. An auger in the hopper caught his leg, pulling it in and mangled it. He couldn't pull his leg out, didn't have his cell phone. There, right there. We really need a means by which, if something happens to us, we have our phone with us. We happen to be out of cell phone range, but we finally got within one when we were on our adventure. And fortunately, it was mostly downhill. So once the cooling line broke, we could still get out of, get where we could call somebody to help us and come pick us up. But there was nobody around for this guy to get some help. He didn't have a cell phone. He took out his pocket knife and sawed off his leg below the knee. After he was free, he crawled 150 feet to the nearest phone and then was flown to a hospital. He never lost consciousness. He was released from a rehabilitation center on Friday, and he will have to wait for the leg to fully heal before he can get a prosthetic leg. Do any of you guys remember the story of a guy that was out here hiking in, I think it was southern Utah, and I'm guessing it was in Arches at a place called the Fiery Furnace. If not, it was somewhere thereabouts. But he was hiking in the Slot Canyons here, and a boulder fell and pinned his arm. And he was there for days, and he had to do the same thing. I think it was Dateline NBC had a show on it for about an hour, and he described how he was stuck. He never told anybody where he was going. No cell phone, probably wouldn't have had reception anyway. But again, nobody knew where he was going to be. Had to cut off his own arm with a pocket knife. These stories are stories about the survival mindset. And as summer approaches and people are going to be going out there and getting into the wilderness, think about, again, avoiding problems, letting people know where you are at all times, when they can find you. And yeah, the NSA, the CIA, they know where you are, but your family needs to know where you are, because something like this happens, they need to come find you before you have to resort to these measures. I don't know if you guys remembered when we were on the old network and I interviewed our good friend Michael Hawk. I know that, thank you, Junk Bond, for introducing me to him. But we talked about this survival mindset. When things get really, it looks like the end is near and you're completely out of options. Think about what motivates you. Think about what is going to keep you going and never give up. I just thought of that. It really reminded me of how important that was, because gosh, imagine having your leg stuck in an auger like that and having to cut your own leg off here. Junk Bond, I think you're going to be on with us again tomorrow if you're feeling better.
I am. I'll be up. I'll be dancing. I'll be smiling, and I will be delivering one heck of a follow-up from Let My People Smoke.
Yes. Oh, speaking of smoke, I want to wrap up the show really quick.
With a cigar. No.
With a quick issue coming out of Pennsylvania, police want to access some medical marijuana records so they can bust gun owners. Now, mind you, medical marijuana is legal in the state of Pennsylvania, yet police officers are trying to crack down on a federal law that says you cannot have a firearm if you use marijuana, whether or not you have permission of the state within which where you live. So I thought that was interesting. They want to access the medical marijuana patient registry so they can start showing up at the residences of these people and arresting them if they own a gun. To get the ball rolling on these tactics, they are trying to convince the higher ups that the public safety is in jeopardy as long as they are in the dark about which citizens are out there using medical marijuana. Please tell me at one time ever in recorded history that somebody is sick enough to be granted the opportunity, the permission to use medical marijuana to alleviate their symptoms that has ever gone and shot up a place or committed a crime with a gun.
0.0.
0.0.
You're
And
too mellow, you're too chilled out, and you're eating.
exactly. And on that note, we're out of time. Hey, everybody, I am Suzanne Sherman on behalf of Greg Jump on Carpenter and Jeff Johnson. I want to thank you for joining us today. This is the Cerberus Radio Network. Thank you for listening. God bless you.